All right, people, we are chugging along like the fast train that is season 4. Season 4, episode 4, entitled Eggtown. I'm still not quite sure what the significance of this title is, especially considering the fact that after the first 3 episodes were so pulse pounding, so fast moving, we're immediately getting things going. The freighter is here. There's new guys on the island. Oh no, what the hell's going on? The last episode ended with Saeed taking off with Desmond and Lapidus in order to head towards the freighter in order to find out what the hell is going on. Will we get more answers this episode? No, we're going to have to wait until next week for the concept. But in the meantime, we can spend some more time with our favorite characters of the island, namely Kate. Now, I wanted to, obviously, we're going to do our normal recap this episode, but I also wanted to take this opportunity because we're far enough into the show now that I wanted to start to dive into some of the major behind the scenes problems that were not necessarily explicit towards this point in the show, but it kind of always been there. But it's one of those things where Lost is kind of very notoriously guilty of that. Which is, I mean, we'll get to that in a later point, but let's just say that some of the behind the scenes of the show were not as like smooth as one would be led to believe. But this episode, this is our first Kate episode of the season. We already knew. I feel like part of the reason why this episode is missing a lot of the dramatic tension that the first 3 episodes did is because unlike the first 3 episodes where we find out about Hurley and Saeed being members of the Oceanic Six, and we find out, obviously, the origin of how the Science Four wound their way onto the boat and eventually to the island. But this episode, we have it's a Kate flash forward. We know that Kate's part of the Oceanic Six from the season 3 finale, and the whole episode, very similar to the Saeed episode last week, is centered around this big twist in the flash forward that ultimately I don't know how much significance it has at this point. It is kind of sort of impactful. You know, the on-island stuff is showing that obviously Kate is getting pretty close to Claire while she's staying with Locke in the barracks, with Locke's group in the barracks temporarily, and essentially playing house with Sawyer. And like I said, it's all building to this twist that I don't necessarily know how important and impactful it is, considering the fact that Aaron has never, obviously, you know, again, Aaron's a baby on the island. There's only so much that they can do with a baby. But also the fact that this episode mostly just comprises of Kate playing house, essentially, with Sawyer. So, and it's once again indicative of the larger Kate problem that we've talked about throughout the first 3 seasons. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I think Lost continues to prove that it's undefinable because last week we had the James Bond episode, just Saeed in Berlin. It's very Pierce Brosnan era Bond. This week on the island, it's a sitcom. It's like Sawyer and Hurley are living together. They're like, hey, what movie should we watch? The Kate and Claire in the other house is like it's a sitcom. It's like two settings, and on the flash forwards, it's a legal thriller apparently, which is like okay, we're doing this now. And then there's like the bit about the whole Miles and Ben scene. That was probably the most plot heavy part, and then of course the big reveal in the end, which is the whole episode. I'm like, okay, it's her son's. Okay, it's gonna be Jack's son. That's where it kind of heads in towards the end when she has their scene with Jack. When you're ready to see the kid, or is it Sawyer's kid, or is like this whole episode, and then I'm going to the end. I'm expecting, okay, this kid's gonna have like shoulder length hair like Sawyer. I know he's weirdly blonde. I'm like, oh, there's only one blonde character on the island. And it's like, what? How? Again, it increases the anticipation of what the hell did they do at the end of this season? Because I thought, okay, this is like maybe months after they've left the island. No, this is years. The kid is speaking now. So again, it's like, what the hell is awaiting us later
As
on?
we know, the timeline gets a little bit messy, obviously, for all of those diehard Lost fans who have seen what happens. But I guess if there's one spoiler that I can give in terms of how the flash forwards are paced, now I don't know how, like, kind of where and when the events of the flash forwards take place throughout it, but there is about a 3-year time jump between when they leave the island, right, and when we are starting to see these flash forwards, and they're starting to have like indications as far as, oh, maybe they should be heading back. That's about the only thing that I can say without
because this is still before Jack completely loses it.
Correct.
And says we need to go back because in that first flash forward, Kate was like, I need to get back to him. I'm like, okay, she needs to get back to Sawyer. Nope, she had to get back to Aaron. So again, just keep paying attention, and
Yep.
and they'll give you the answers.
Yeah, this is the point where you really needed to be paying attention to the show. Is it the first 3 seasons weren't enough? It's like, no, you really, really needed to be paying attention to the show at this point in order to get what the hell was going on. Because not only are these flash forwards now extremely plot relevant in a way that the flashbacks last season weren't, but because you don't know when they're taking place, it's up to you as the audience member to kind of try and piece things together. So you're like, okay, like we know obviously that the last thing that happens before they presumably make the decision to go back is Jack kind of growing a beard and losing it. But throughout all these flash forwards, we know that like, okay, Hurley's back in the asylum. Jack is relatively beardless. Kate has Aaron with her. And so we can presume that Aaron is now a member of the Oceanic Six since he was on the plane. Kate's also, obviously, we kind of figured this out, that Kate was going to be,
I
immediately
guess he was technically on the plane. It just wasn't.
born,
Yeah.
But that also raises several questions of it's like, wait a minute, how is Aaron a member of the Oceanic Six if he wasn't even born yet while they were on the plane? Like, how would they have known that Claire was pregnant? So more because I don't think that's something that you necessarily have to report. That's something that would go on a. So
we'll have to look into airline legal papers for that one.
Yeah, exactly. But so immediately Kate is in a legal battle, given the fact that, she was a prisoner when she was on the plane and the marshal died while they were on the island. And so once again, the only thing that we really can gather from this section of the flash forwards plot wise is that Jack has basically been the lead in terms of telling this story about how there were only 8 survivors, but there's the
that's
Oceanic
another
Six.
thing that they're
That's another
lying
thing. All right.
completely about.
So they're lying their asses completely about that. They said that they did crash land on an island, but that they were the only survivors in order to protect everybody else. So like, once again, just more so raising it. And then Kate raises the thing at the end of it's like, oh, you've been telling that story so often, it's almost like you believe it. And then there's this weird back and forth of where it's like Jack wants to see Kate, but Kate is like, not until you see him. And then obviously we have the twist reveal at the end with Aaron. So it's like, okay, so Jack is not wanting to see Aaron because it's obviously going to be an indicator, reminder.
Yeah, that's his nephew.
Right, of everybody who they left behind. Exactly. That's his nephew, too. So that means that somewhere along the way, Jack found out, obviously, about Claire being his sister, too. So you have all of these things that are being dropped, and it's just raising more questions to, like, kind of an aggravating degree. And it's one of those things where, along the lines of the show, where if it's dropping too many questions, but the plot itself is not super compelling, that, I feel like, is kind of where I understand where Lost fans started to get a little bit aggravated. Because obviously the difference before is that you were raising all these questions, but the plot itself was so compelling that you would be like, okay, like, I don't even, the question would kind of go in the periphery. Now you're like, okay, what the hell is going on in these flash forwards? To the point where you're like, okay, like, why do I ultimately give a shit? And that ultimately dovetails with, like I said, the Kate issue, which I would say is more of a larger problem that the show had with its female characters ultimately, which is, we talked obviously a lot about Kate being a J.J. Abrams character stuck in a Damon Lindelof show, where Kate is introduced, has this pretty compelling backstory where the twist at the end of the pilot episode is that she was actually the prisoner that the marshal was transporting. And so this entire time she's having this weird, interesting back and forth as far as like, oh, do I even want to be rescued? Because as soon as I go back to the mainland, I'm going to be put on trial for this crime that I committed that we eventually found out she killed her stepfather, or who she thought was her stepfather, who turned out to be her actual father. And then her own mother turned her in ultimately after she also got a very close friend of hers killed. So you have all of these reasons as to why Kate should not want to go back. But ultimately you see in the flash forward that she does go back. She is a part of the Oceanic Six. And then that also dovetails with everything that's going on with her on the island, where her entire plot on the island is basically, again, playing house with Sawyer, and Sawyer constantly being like, why do you want to go back? Like, we know why Sawyer has vocalized why he doesn't want to go back. He's like, there's nothing for me back there. And it feels like, and he's trying to do the same thing with Kate. But again, just because the ultimate fact of Kate has been reduced to like a plot device that's just there to generate tension between this beyond tired love triangle between Jack and Sawyer ultimately. So much so that Sawyer even kind of, meta references it at the end of this episode. That's the other thing too I love about the season is the meta references to the fact of, okay, we made how many episodes of this show? Time to start making fun of ourselves a little bit. Where Hurley in the last episode was like, oh, great, they said this another Sawyer. And now Sawyer in the end of this episode is like, yeah, just until you find another reason to be pissed off at Jack and then you'll come running back to me, to which she slaps him. But I can't say he's wrong ultimately. And again, it dovetails into the fact that Lost, and this was again commented on top of the fact that, again, if you were a person of color on the show, you are not making it through, because plot spoiler event, There's not a single person of color that makes it through alive to the end of this show. And
Oh man, what the hell happens at the end of
yeah,
the show?
yeah. So I'm just dropping
Let the
that
white
little
people
hint.
live.
We're far enough in. I can start to drop that. And if you were a woman, on the show, you were going to be.
You stopped getting development after season 3.
Yeah, you were not only that, but you were going to be attached to like of your the entirety of your development was going to be based around another male character. So Kate,
because looking at season 1, like Claire had a pretty substantial role.
Yes,
Sun with her whole I speak English, but I'm not going to tell anyone. With Michael, like that. Now I'm remembering all the good stuff in season 1.
Now it's all coming back.
Kate was like this Lara Croft type character on the island, this fugitive, and now it's like, and then even last season, Julia was like a pretty strong presence, and now she's also there. She's going with people to somewhere, and
it's like you just look at all of the female characters in the show.
Know.
Sun and Jin obviously are still attached at the hip because they're a package duo, but Kate is just a plot foible between Jack and Sawyer. Claire is split between, Aaron, and obviously she was with Charlie and now is dependent on Locke. Juliet is, again, entirely dependent on Jack. And now you have Charlotte, who is the new character who, again, had a pretty awesome intro, but as you'll see, like...
Yeah, she's already being pushed
being reduced to, like, just paired up with Daniel. So I felt like this was, like, the perfect opportunity because we're at that point in the show now where, again, it's still good. Everything is still motivated by the characters, but the plot mechanics are starting to take a little bit of hold. And as a result, it was always very easy for the writers to kind of reduce the female characters to, again, just dependent on the males who are driving the action. And let's just say that, again, this was still the late 2000s. There were still some very, how should I put this? Outdated methods of thinking when it came to the women and characters of color, and some not so nice comments, were and jokes were starting to be made, and it was a little bit of irregularity in the room at this point. And it really sucks because, again, what was part of the appeal of this show when it first started? The fact that this was probably the most diverse cast that television in general had ever seen. You had an Iraqi main character, you had 2 Korean main characters, you had you had obviously multiple black characters that were introduced, first with Michael and then with Echo. And obviously, again, one of the parts of interest of the storylines in season 1 was the fact that Michael's storyline was set around Walt and the idea of, a black father trying to maintain a relationship with his son. And Harold Perrineau was very, very vocal about that after leaving the show, about how he was very, very angry with the direction that the show went ultimately. Now, his problems, I feel like, are micro-specific, but again, the fact that he felt that it was an opportunity to tell a story about black fathers and sons, which he felt like was a type of story that was almost never told in mainstream media, and then obviously that was foregone in order to focus on the more sci-fi, supernatural, crazy shit going on the island stuff. But it was just one of those things where, it's one of those things where, again, the show, the great parts of the show are still great, and so it's one of those things that Lost fans have kind of taken into consideration over the fact that it's like, okay, if we want to still love and rewatch the show, this is something that we have to be consciously aware of, because to hold it against the show would be ignoring all the other great things and revolutionary things that it did, but to ignore it completely would be kind of turning a little bit of a blind eye. So it's become one of those things that, like, Lost fans have kind of come to accept, but again, it's that thing where at this point in the show, it's kind of impossible to not notice.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of the detriment to the, as higher concept they go, they have to compress the roles. Like, okay, we could have spread this in season 1, we could have spread this over 5 or 6 characters. Now we have to compress it to Jack, Locke, and Sawyer, this sort of main trio on the island that's been driving the whole show. So, and again, I guess it's like that thing of the 2000s and before, probably, of like, okay, we're just gonna give it to all the white dudes to let them handle the plot, I guess.
Yeah,
and I guess through the 2010s that kind of improved with, like, I don't know, Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Game
of Thrones and many other shows. I would say mostly it was the late 2010s and really the early 2020s that I would see that you would really start to see that. But yeah, it was a big problem, to say the least. And again, there's one particular episode once we get to the final season where they basically take an excuse. They take a lost favorite MacGuffin, a bomb going off, an explosion, if you will, which, as we know, has happened at the end of every single season so far.
When in doubt, blow something
When
up.
in doubt, blow something up, and they
It's loud, it's colorful, it's impactful.
And they take the opportunity to kill off 3 major characters. I won't say who, but they take the opportunity. But all diehard Lost fans know what episode I'm talking about, and what I'm talking about. They take the opportunity to kill off 3 major characters. It's very, very It's very, very heartbreaking. It's very, very tragic.
Can't
and
imagine
then you
that
notice
well in the forums.
Yeah, and then you notice who survived, and you're like, oh, But all of that being said, so I guess we should, like I said, I don't want to dive too far into the flash forwards because it's kind of, pointless. And like I said, it's all set around, the revelation that, okay, Kate has Aaron and is pretending that Aaron is her son. And you're like, okay.
See where that goes.
Yeah.
If it goes anywhere.
Exactly. So on the island, Locke brings Ben eggs. He tries to get more information out of him. Ben just refuses to tell him and continues to taunt him, being like, you are so desperate to find out what to do next because you have no idea. Yeah. You show immediately when Locke leaves that Ben is still getting under Locke's skin.
They're back where they were.
They're literally right back where they started in season 2. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. Kate, who stayed at the barracks, obviously talks with Claire, and Sawyer is getting closer to Claire and Aaron. Tries to get Locke to take her to Miles. Locke refuses. Once again, is continuing this kind of weird dictatorship that he's maintaining on his side. Meanwhile, at the beach, Jin is trying to find a place for them to live once they get off the island, but Sun refuses, saying she wants to raise the baby in Korea. Jack arrives back at the beach with Julia, Daniel, and Charlotte. Sun questions why Kate stayed with Locke. Back at the barracks, Kate tricks Hurley into telling her where Miles is. That was a really funny scene where Hurley immediately realizes, he's like, you Scooby-Dooed me, didn't you?
He's like,
just don't tell Locke.
If Hurley knows, everyone knows.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty great. And also, it's funny too, like later on when Sawyer is telling Locke, especially because you assume that Sawyer is pulling a con, because we've just grown so used to that at this point. But then it's revealed that it's like, oh no, actually Kate was conning Sawyer and redirecting him and Locke. So I thought that was really funny. She goes to see Miles, asks him if he knows who she is. Miles tells her that if she can get him in a room with Ben, he'll tell her anything that she wants to know. Kate goes to Hurley and Sawyer, requests Sawyer's help to help break Ben out of Locke's. Sawyer later challenges Locke to a game of backgammon. Locke asks Sawyer if he thinks he knows what he's doing. Sawyer ends up revealing Kate's plan. What did you think of that scene, real quick, where Locke is trying to have like a heart-to-heart with Sawyer? Once again, showing that, like, again, these two are have kind of become brothers bonded in blood after the events that happened at the brig with Anthony Cooper.
Yeah, I guess Locke's kind of becoming like a dictator. He said he wasn't, but he's kind of he's kind of losing it here a bit, like similar to how he did that towards the end of season 2 and throughout season 3. And when he puts the grenade in Miles's mouth, is it a real grenade?
That was crazy too. That was a crazy scene.
But even enough, that's like, oh, okay, this is Locke now. This is his trajectory for this season essentially. Yeah, the Sawyer and Locke stuff was like, okay, this is weirdly endearing for what's happening on the rest of the island, and then that leads into the Miles and Ben scene, which is just more gold from Ben. It's like 3.2. Why not 3.3?
Why not 3.2? I love that. Again, you get one shit talker in a room with another, and you're just like, oh, this is going to be gold, absolutely. But so, Sawyer reveals Kate's plan to Locke. Locke and Sawyer go to the boathouse. Kate's already sprung Miles. She pulled the switcheroo. She made them think that she was going to she pulled the switcheroo. Kate throws Miles in the basement with Ben, and basically what it results in, so like I said, we know that Miles is a seer, not a seer, he is a necromancer. He is capable of basically communing with the dead and essentially getting their thoughts. This was revealed in his individual origin 2 episodes ago. And so we obviously know that he can tell the dead. When they found Naomi's corpse, he was able to find out that they were telling the truth about how she died. And basically what's revealed is there's a lot of conversation that goes on between Miles and Ben in this scene, basically of, once again, more so tying to a lot of the things that the characters on the show and we as the audience don't know, but they clearly know. A little bit of dramatic irony there, a little bit of secret telling, if you will, where Miles like, look, you know who I am, you know who I work for, don't treat me like one of them, like that. I don't know what's really going on here. So basically he's like, look, we can either do one of 2 things. He's like, I can either tell my employer where you are, and he's going to send an army and raise this island to the ground trying to find you, or I can pretend that you're dead and you can pay me, showing that Miles is only in this for himself.
Yeah,
he's only
and you need a guy like that who's only in it for the money. It's like it's because everyone's like, oh, what the hell's the island? What are all the secrets now? This guy just wants a bit of money from the guy.
Again, and it's kind of telling too how you see in this episode and really throughout the season that Sawyer Sawyer has much more so been like devoting himself to a cause. Again, he claims that he's still in it for himself, that he's just trying to survive, but he teamed up with Locke. He's trying to convince Kate to stay there with him now that he like seemingly finally has a place to live. Like, you've really seen Sawyer turn over a new leaf, and now that Sawyer is kind of not the old Sawyer that we knew, Miles is kind of, come in to take his place up where he's like, yeah, I only care about myself. I'm only in this for myself. I'm only in it for the money. I don't care about anyone or anything else. And of course, all that it results in is Ben just is Ben just more shit talking. I love the lines where he's like, well, as you can see, I'm a little bit tied up at the moment, so I'm not able to. So they're just writing incredible lines for Ben in every single episode. But once again, if we know about last episode, if there's one thing that we know, it's that, like, again, Ben is still the puppet master pulling all of the strings. So basically, after that happens, so Miles gives Ben a week to get the money together. And again, we know that Ben has the money, given that Saeed found the money in when they were exploring Ben's house in the last episode. Miles tells Kate everything about her, before she got on the plane, and that she's better off staying on the island. They get caught by Locke. Kate later tells Locke what they talked about. Locke banishes her from the barracks. I said Kate goes to Sawyer.
Very Lord of the Flies.
Very Lord of the Flies.
You're banished.
Yep. Kate goes to Sawyer. They make sweet, sweet love, or do they? I'm not quite sure. On the beach, Jack goes to Daniel, and Charlotte says he can't get in touch with anyone on the boat. Charlotte tells him about their emergency number. Jack puts it on speaker. Regina, the person on the phone, claims to know nothing about the helicopter coming. The next morning, Locke visits Miles, sticks the grenade in his mouth, pulls his pin. Kate then says goodbye to Sawyer, who tells her that she's going to find another reason to get mad at Jack, and then we'll be back. So a couple things about the ending plot of this. One, the fact that Locke sticking the grenade in Miles' mouth was just like a what the fuck, where we know that Locke has been capable of doing some shit before, but I don't think he's ever done anything quite this crazy.
No, this is definitely turning a new leaf, and it's probably down to Ben and him getting in his head, so he's taking it out on Miles because he's not going to take it out on his fellow survivors. Like, he banished Kate, but it's just like, go over there. I'm sick of you. No, he's gonna literally just put a grenade in the dude's mouth. Like, and you keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, literally. And I love that too. And he's perfect. Like, listen, he's like, when you tell me something that I'm ready to know, you'll tell me. And then, so now the big, like I said, we already talked about the Kate and Sawyer thing. So now the real question is, like I said, considering that there hasn't been that much happening on the beach except for this one instance. So like you said, they're continuing to hammer home the time displacement, time travel elements, where, again, you had Daniel performing the experiment last episode with the missile and the time discrepancy between when the missile took off from the boat and when it landed. And now you have the thing of where we know the helicopter took off. We saw it take off at the end of last episode, but then they get in touch with their person on the boat, and she's like, I haven't heard anything about a helicopter.
Yeah.
So once
and
again,
been like a day at
and
this
it's only
point,
been a day.
Least.
Yeah.
So and they were what, like 50 kilometers out, I said.
Something like that.
You'd get there before enough. A day.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So once again, continuing to hammer home the idea of, it's like, okay, and I like how this is interesting too, where, again, they're continuing to try and sow the seeds, like, oh, these guys are not to be trusted. They are not, they are not to be trusted. You cannot trust the word of anything that they say. But at the same time, once again, showing, like I said, we know why Miles is on the island, and also showing how last episode we know why Daniel's on the island, where Daniel is there to kind of explore the different time discrepancies between the island and off island. And so this is, once again, another hint of that. And will we find out more? Tune in next week, because let me just say, the constant, there's a reason why.
That famous image of Desmond holding the screen or whatever, probably talking to Penny, I would imagine.
Probably, yes.
Yeah,
but yes,
how does he get to that? Or we'll see.
Find out
what else happens. Why is this one of the greatest TV episodes of all time?
Yes, we will tune in, and we will get to all of that next week. We're also going to be joined by Luke with the Franchise Addicts next week, so we will be covering all of that next week. But real quick, before we get out of here, you get a chance to watch any movies this weekend?
I did not, but I did watch. Actually, no, I did. I watched Warfare, and I watched The Housemaid.
Oh, nice!
Warfare. I enjoyed Warfare. It's like,
Warfare is like a movie.
This is like, okay, this is just a full set piece.
That movie's made for you.
Yeah, and Housemaid was enjoyable for reasons outside of
exactly. Like I said, but the greatest description I ever came up with for that movie, it is Get Out, but for suburban white women. It is incredible in terms of that.
And also, I read and watched the show Dark Matter, which is like,
oh, nice, the Apple TV Plus show.
Yeah, which is
How
like
is
it's the most hard sci-fi attempt at doing the multiverse, and it's really good.
Okay, all right.
And they're doing season 2 this year, and it's the original author writing season 2 as the sequel.
So if you're a fan of Dark Matter, I gotta recommend another show that was airing around this time as well on network TV, and also was very, very much taken from Lost, but was somewhat original, especially and was kind of tackling the multiverse like long before the multiverse was a thing. Fringe. If you haven't watched Fringe, that is a must watch for you. But... Yeah, John Noble from Lord of the Rings. Ironically, also Lance Reddick, Matthew Abaddon is in the show as well. There's a bunch. Leonard Nimoy, I think, is in the show. Bunch of people. Like, that is a must watch if you're a fan of those types of shows. I have seen 3 movies so far this week. My 4th one will be tonight, later on after this podcast. I watched Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, which is basically Gore Verbinski, who is the director of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, returning to do a somewhat discount Terminator movie that also doubles as like a Tarantino-esque movie, where it's an ensemble-based movie that stars Sam Rockwell as this crazed-looking homeless-like dude who comes from the future in order to round up a group of random passerbys from a diner in order to try and help and have them help him stop the incoming AI system before it destroys everything in the future. It's wild, it's wacky, it's crazy. It features a very, very fun Sam Rockwell performance. That was fun. And then I saw Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights on Thursday, which
has been getting glowing reviews.
It has been getting glowing reviews. From what I heard, it is nothing at all like the source material. It is pretty much just Jacob Elordi fan fiction, since we found out that the only reason why Emerald Fennell wanted to do this movie was while they were making Saltburn, and she saw Jacob Elordi while they were filming, and for whatever reason could only envision him as the character Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. And how do I describe this? It's basically smut that halfway through the movie, basically Jacob Elordi becomes Nate Jacobs once again from Euphoria.
Well, that reminds me, I watched season 1.
Oh boy.
There's no plot. It's just like
plot. There's no
we're
plot.
all high and we all hate each other.
Yes, pretty much. That's literally it. But yeah. So, and then it's basically how him and Margot Robbie, the basic premise is that him and Margot Robbie are like childhood friends, and then she has to marry another person in order, because she realizes that they're living in squalor, and she has to marry up in order to maintain their class status, but you can't marry Heathcliff, who's this boy that they adopted that she's grown up with and is clearly in love with, but because he's of a lower class status. So he is angry. He leaves. And then years later, he returns, now a lord, having purchased there. And they basically have this like toxic back and forth where they're like trying to torture each other, where it's like, where they basically end up having this steaming affair that ends up just destroying everybody around them. It's beyond stupid, but it was kind of really entertaining in terms of it being soap opera smut. And then the third movie,
I imagine it's a lot better put forward in the original novel, because this is like the modern barbaric version of it. Yes. So and apparently Gen Z is too stupid to read the novel anyway.
Of course, because you think that Gen Z is going to read a novel that was published in the 1800s.
I mean, I'll read it before I see the movie so that I can compare.
You actually, have the attention span to read. But but my other favorite thing about this is the fact that apparently, and this has been like a source of like major contempt, is the fact that Heathcliff in the original novels, while not entirely black, is I believe he is supposed to be like a gypsy with darker colored skin. So that's supposed to like inform a little bit of the relationship. And when you watch this movie, you realize, and you see what Jacob Elordi is doing, and you're like, there is no way in hell they could have made this a black character. Double Toasted, I think, covered it brilliantly in the short that I put up on my Instagram yesterday. And then the third movie that I saw is a movie that I'm not sure if you would like it or not. It depends on your tolerance of Heat ripoffs, and that is Crime 101, which is basically Heat, but starring Marvel superheroes, essentially, where it stars Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Halle Berry, and Barry Keoghan in a crime caper that involves Chris Hemsworth as a master jewel thief who ends up getting pursued by Mark Ruffalo, who's the cop that's trying to catch him against all odds, and Halle Berry is the insurance broker who kind of gets caught in like a web between the two of them. I still can't get over the fact that she looks like that, and she's turning 60 this year. And then Barry Keoghan is once again like the psychopathic criminal who's kind of like also gets involved in this scenario. It was fine. It was fun. It was a good solid 2.5 hour crime caper. If you've seen Heat, you'll know exactly what the plot of this movie is. But again, it's not the worst Heat ripoff that I've seen.
If you're ripping off like the better thing you're ripping off, the better your movie is probably going to be.
Exactly.
Like all the Lost ripoffs, they're good because Lost is so good.
Exactly. And Heat is like the greatest crime thriller ever made. So if you're going to rip it off.
That one shot of De Niro in the blue basically defined Nolan's entire career.
Exactly. So. I mean, the opening, again, Nolan, it is no secret that basically Heat influenced The Dark Knight. And the reason why The Dark Knight is so good is because The Dark Knight is Heat. So I like this one better than Den of Thieves, which was the schlocky Gerard Butler Ice Cube Jr. one that came out back in 2nd, 2019 that they actually made a sequel of last year in January that nobody saw. I saw it. It was fun. It was fine, but it didn't have like the same like kind of pop that the first one did. So yeah, those are all the movies that I saw.
Yeah. If Gerard Butler is not saving someone in a movie, then it's probably not his best movie.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. So yeah, so with that being said, that's Eggtown. Like I said, not too much to cover this week, but next week is the big one.
The big one.
The Constant, the greatest episode of the show, as recently named by The Ringer, the greatest episode of television of the 21st century, beating out such instances as Pine Barrens from The Sopranos, Ozymandias from Breaking Bad, The Suitcase from Mad Men, Middle Ground from The Wire, The Reigns of Casimir from Game of Thrones, and Connor's Wedding from Succession. This episode beat them all out. So what is it that makes The Constant so great? Tune in next week.
I have no idea.
Out.
I can only imagine one scene. I don't even know where it is.
I've been hyping this shit up since 2024, and we're finally here. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so excited. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. There is actually hope that the video is going to get made because I'm actually catching up on the stuff now. So
finally, I've been waiting.
It's been a 4 out of 5 year. Like there's like a bunch of 4 out of 5s. I'm like, okay, which 5 are going to make it into the list? So
exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly. And you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talk TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to also check me out on the bite-sized breakdown episode of Marty Supreme. I recorded it yesterday, and I don't know when that will be up, but that will be up sometime soon. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and get lost. We'll see you guys next week for The Constant.